to week. I thought he made really good decisions throughout the game. You're going to have your plays that there's throws down the field, and if they're not there, you check it down and you can make good yards. So I thought, by and large, good decisions.
Something about the Cleveland Browns quarterback battle is starting to feel off. Not dramatic on the surface, not officially, but the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to ignore what's happening. Everyone keeps using the same phrase, open competition. Coaches say it, reporters repeat it, fans debate it like the race is still wide open. But inside NFL buildings, the truth usually shows up long before the official announcement does. And right now, the signals coming out of Cleveland do not feel like the signals of a truly undecided quarterback room. They feel like the language of a staff that already knows who it trusts.
And obviously feel good about him in those moments. He'll come through. We came up short yesterday as a football team, but I have all the faith in the world in Shedeur. I have all the faith in the world in our players in those moments.
That is what makes this story so interesting. Publicly, the Browns can keep selling patience, evaluation, and process. That is what organizations do. They protect flexibility. They avoid headlines too early. They keep every player engaged. But behind that careful messaging, the tone has started to shift in a way that fans are picking up immediately. Because when coaches talk about some quarterbacks, it sounds routine. When they talk about one in particular, it sounds different. More energy, more detail, more belief. And once that kind of difference shows up, the entire conversation changes.
Early, there was the one where kind of bouncing around the pocket, had two hands on the ball, then went forward and made a huge play. Another time they were playing man and everything kind of flushed out in front of them, went vertical, made a huge play. So
this stops being a battle about who might win the job eventually. It becomes a question of whether the staff has already chosen the direction of the room and is simply waiting for the right moment to let the rest of the world catch up. That is where Cleveland feels right now. Not like a true quarterback competition, like a competition that still exists on paper, but not necessarily in reality. When a coaching staff truly believes in a quarterback, you can hear it. Not always in one giant headline quote, not always in some bold declaration. Usually, it shows up in the little things, the detail, the comfort, the eagerness. That is exactly why Shedeur Sanders keeps standing out in this conversation. Whenever his name enters the discussion, the language around him feels different. Coaches do not sound like they are checking a box or giving the usual safe answer. They sound engaged. They sound specific. They sound like they are talking about someone they can actually see leading the offense. And that matters.
You know you can't offer Malik Willis that much money, and you know Malik Willis ain't better than Shedeur Sanders. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's cut the games. He's not better than him. You don't believe he's better than him. You never liked Malik Willis. He ain't never had a bone in your body who thought Malik Willis was cold. It's anybody but Shedeur Sanders.
In the NFL, generic praise is easy. Every quarterback is hard-working. Every young player is developing. Every room is competitive. That kind of language means almost nothing. What means something is when the tone shifts from polite acknowledgement to real football belief. That is where Sanders seems to be living right now. The conversation around him keeps circling back to traits that matter for a starting quarterback: decision-making, poise, command, leadership, the ability to process quickly and keep the offense under control. That is not backup quarterback language. That is not developmental flyer language. That is how teams talk when they are imagining a player in the biggest role on the field. And once that kind of vision starts forming inside a building, it becomes difficult to reverse, because belief creates momentum. Coaches start seeing that player as the answer. Reps feel more important. Development becomes more intentional. Every positive moment adds fuel to the idea that this player is not just competing, he is separating. That is why Shedeur Sanders no longer feels like one name in a crowded room. He feels like the name the room is quietly moving toward. This is where the quarterback conversation gets uncomfortable, because Dillon Gabriel's situation feels like one of the harshest truths in professional football.
If they thought Shedeur Sanders was great, If they move 4 quarterbacks for Shedeur Sanders to play, if they told you at the end of the season they'd seen some things for Shedeur Sanders, then that same premise would fall, right? If they believe Shedeur Sanders is great and they believe he's a franchise quarterback, then we got to roll with it.
A player can be respected without being truly believed in. And right now, that distinction feels like the entire story. Nobody is saying Gabriel cannot play. Nobody is attacking his work ethic, his college production, or his professionalism. On the surface, the comments around him remain respectful. But in the NFL, respect is not the same thing as momentum. Respect is not the same thing as opportunity, and it definitely is not the same thing as being the guy a coaching staff is preparing to trust with the offense. That is where the warning signs start flashing. Because when Gabriel comes up, the energy feels different. The responses sound shorter. The enthusiasm feels lower. The language becomes safer and flatter, almost like the staff is acknowledging him because they have to, not because they're excited about where he fits in the bigger picture. And that is the brutal part.
Here's how they get better at quarterback. Here's what you got to say. Shedeur Sanders says he did some really nice things as a rookie with a terrible offensive line and receiver core. How did the Cleveland Browns get better on offense? The same way that the New York Giants get better. And let's hope Jackson Dart gets better over the offseason. How does Cam Ward get better?
Quarterback battles are not always lost through public criticism. Sometimes they are lost through silence, through shorter answers, through the lack of forward-looking excitement that organizations naturally show when they are sold on a player. That is what makes this feel humiliating for Gabriel, even if no one has openly embarrassed him. In some ways, this version is worse. It is quieter, colder, more revealing. It suggests that while he is still in the room, he may no longer be at the center of the plan. And once a quarterback loses that internal momentum, the path back becomes incredibly narrow. Because in this league, quarterbacks do not just need talent, they need belief behind the talent. Right now, Gabriel seems to be getting courtesy. Shedeur Sanders seems to be getting conviction. What makes this story even harder to dismiss is that the shift is not only happening inside the building. Outside the building, the same pattern is starting to show up everywhere. Local media sees it, analysts see it. Even the betting markets are starting to move like this competition is tilting in one clear direction. That matters more than people think, because once the people closest to the team start speaking with confidence, it usually means the signals have become too strong to ignore. Reporters who follow the Browns every day are not reacting to random fan emotion. They're listening to tone, tracking patterns, comparing how players are discussed, and connecting dots that casual viewers miss. And those dots keep pointing toward Shedeur Sanders. The same thing happens in betting markets. Odds don't move for no reason. They react to information, momentum, and patterns that sharp observers believe are real. When one quarterback begins climbing while another starts fading, it tells you that people studying the situation closely are picking up the same message. That message is simple. This room may not be as open as it sounds. That is what makes Dillon Gabriel's position feel even more difficult. He is not only fighting the internal energy of the coaching staff, he is also losing ground in the external perception battle. Once media narratives and market signals start moving against a quarterback, the pressure increases fast. Suddenly, every rep feels heavier. Every update feels more final.
Yeah, when things aren't going well, there's always going to be change. That's part of it, because keep doing the same thing and don't change anything, then it's insanity. But just I feel like at times there's things that went well and we sustained and executed, and then in certain moments we didn't execute, and that starts with me. But yeah, it's always frustrating when it's not going the way you want it to, and you put in the work and time, but in crucial moments you got to have it.
Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders keeps gaining traction without an official announcement even being made. That is how quarterback takeovers often begin in the NFL. Not with one dramatic moment, but with a slow shift in language, belief, and momentum, until everyone realizes the race may have ended before the team ever said it out loud. There's another reason the momentum around Shedeur Sanders feels different, and it has nothing to do with one press conference or one practice report. It has to do with the kind of environment he has lived in his entire life. Sanders didn't grow up learning football from a distance. He grew up inside it. Being the son of Dillon Sanders meant he spent years watching how elite athletes prepare, compete, and handle pressure at the highest level. Long before he became a college star, he was already exposed to the mental side of the game that most quarterbacks only begin learning once they reach the NFL. That background changes things. Quarterback in the NFL is not just about throwing the football. It's about leadership, composure, communication, and the ability to stay calm when everything around you gets chaotic. Sanders has been dealing with expectations and scrutiny for years. Critics have questioned him, analysts have dissected him, and fans have watched his every move. Instead of shrinking from that spotlight, he has consistently leaned into it. That kind of mental resilience is exactly what NFL teams look for when they are searching for someone to lead an offense. The difficult truth about Dillon Gabriel's situation is that it might not be about ability at all. Professional football often comes down to timing and fit more than pure talent.
And do you find yourself at all, I mean, are you staying focused at the task at hand, or do you find yourself ever looking over your shoulder and wondering, when are they going to turn this thing over to Shedeur? Does it ever cross your mind?
No, all I can do is control what I can. And, yeah, that's what you got to do.
Gabriel built an impressive college career. His production, accuracy, and quick decision-making earned him respect across multiple programs. By traditional standards, he entered the league with the kind of profile that can absolutely compete for playing time. But coaching changes can rewrite everything. When a new staff takes over, they bring a new vision for how the offense should function. Certain traits become priorities, others become less important. Quarterbacks who align perfectly with that vision see their stock rise quickly. Those who do not fit as cleanly can find themselves drifting toward the background, even if their overall talent remains strong. That is apparently what Dillon Gabriel is facing in Cleveland. He didn't suddenly lose his ability to play quarterback. The situation around him simply shifted in a direction that seems to favor someone else. And once that kind of shift happens inside an NFL building, reversing it becomes incredibly difficult. When you step back and look at everything happening around the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, one possibility becomes harder to ignore. The decision may already be made. Teams rarely announce these things early. Maintaining the appearance of competition keeps every player motivated and avoids unnecessary pressure before the season begins. But internally, coaching staffs often reach conclusions long before fans or reporters hear them. Right now, the signals coming from Cleveland suggest the staff has already formed a strong belief about where this offense should go. That belief appears to be pointing toward Shedeur Sanders.
The language around him feels forward-looking. The attention he receives suggests preparation rather than simple evaluation. Meanwhile, the conversation around other quarterbacks has slowly faded into the background. If that pattern continues through training camp, the official announcement may simply confirm what many people are already starting to suspect. Cleveland might finally believe it has found its next starting quarterback. And if that belief proves correct, the entire direction of the franchise could begin changing much sooner than anyone expected.